my parent died. I went through divorce as a kid, went through divorce myself. I had money. I lost money. I had a eviction notice on my apartment. All of the life events that they say you're supposed to go through, I had already gone through by the time I was 30.
Hey, got something really cool I want to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, this is going to be a fun episode. I'm bringing in Marquez Mosher, and we're going to talk about his life, his childhood, and a lot of similarities between me and him, just who we are, our characters. This is actually a lot of fun. This is a great episode. So enjoy this ride, guys, and then go find Marquez in all the worlds that he's in. Enjoy. All right, guys, another fun episode. I'm bringing in Marquez Mosher, and what's fun is as I'm looking at him right now on the Zoom call that we always record this on, he's got this whole Star Wars thing behind him, so I'm going to bust his chops about being one of those guys, right? But he's got a really cool story. He's a funny guy, so I'm really looking forward to having him on the show. So, Marquez, buddy, thanks for being on here. Please share with us. I can't even talk. Share your journey. Jeez.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I have that Star Wars in the background, and it's funny because I'm old enough to remember the originals, barely, and it's a constant thread that's gone through the house. It's literally been generational, and as much as it's much more commercial now, it was always meant to be something that I shared with my parents, and then I share, and now I can share with my kids, and it'll get passed down. So in some little ways, it's kind of a generational thing that we can all kind of remember when it used to be when they had one of the movies, it was a big event, and we'd all do it. And we had stories about one time where my wife stood in the rain in order to get the tickets, because this was before you get the advance tickets and everything. And one of the kids, they would switch out and be with her and stuff. So it was kind of a family thing. And in fact, my daughter one time when she was in elementary school they asked her, is anybody religious and what kind of religion and stuff? And she goes, well, I believe in the force. Like, okay, that works. There's a lot of for that. I'm like, so, and this is kind of before it all blew up. And now it's so much, it's different. But yeah, so we have that on the wall to reminder, kind of it's a little bit of a daily thing about, try and all those good things that came from it. But yeah, it's interesting because I have 4 kids, but both my wife and I are only single, or basically only child. And I grew up with literally in different worlds. My parents, they got divorced when I was about 11. And up until that point, it was 2 different worlds that I was living in, and multiple ones with the rest of the family, where when I was younger, one night my babysitter would be a Hell's Angel. And the next, dinner I'd be going with my mom because she was in politics, and a presidential candidate had invited her because they thought she could influence some of the constituents. So it was a very interesting time because I was learning about all the different perspectives, all the different people out there, and realizing that we're all the same. You throw in a little bit of alcohol addiction for my parents, which they both actually ended up recovering, but it made for a very interesting childhood that I didn't even realize until older, because my defense mechanism was that it's not my fault. And that worked out really, really well for these situations because I didn't take it as my fault. I didn't take that they drank or that they argued or that they got divorced, any of that stuff as my fault. I looked at it from the perspective of, you know what, when I got divorced, I got 2 things now. I'm going to get 2 bikes. I'm going to get 2, 2 birthday parties. I'm going to get 2 of everything. And as that went through, that I kind of ended up having a sense of confidence, and through high school and even through college, that was able to keep things at bay. But the problem is that it was a false sense of confidence. And it wasn't until I particularly realized that there's a fine line between ego and confidence. And I was kind of able to find that. And when I did, I realized all of the different things that I had grown up and seeing the perspectives and the way my 2 parents were. One was very much on one end of the scale as being proper and motivated and entrepreneurial and have your own business, which she did. And then my dad, who was very grounded and down to earth and was able to basically be able to connect with, say, the common person. But yet his were good old strategies for life about manners. They don't cost you a dime, but can make you $1 million. And the blend of those 2 things came out when I had kids. And my first wife, we had kids very young. And that was the point when I realized things had to change for me, because I was corporate bound, all the corporate ladder climbing and stuff. And then I realized, no, with my kid, that's not going to work. I can't. I want to be around. And it was a whole nother thing because we had a kid early. Then we also had the next one about 1.5 years later. But at this point, the marriage was falling apart. And I knew it. And so it was definitely a matter of, if I wanted kids to get raised in a certain way, I needed to be around. And that was difficult because it was sometimes being like a single parent within a relationship. And then when we actually got divorced, it was a single parent for a little bit. Eventually, everything kind of worked out as a lot of times it does. But I was, again, all of this was pressured with my mindset and my perspective. And everything that I had learned growing up was being reevaluated. And it made for a very difficult time when that first Christmas and I didn't have my kids. And it was hard. It was like dropping them off that morning because we split the day, and driving away was probably the hardest thing I had ever experienced. And you talk about the world and sending messages, whatever you want to believe in. But this was about 4 or 5 hours later, I get a call from my ex saying, hey, we want to go do some stuff with the family. Do you want the kids back? And I'm like, yes, I do. And those times that I was able to realize that, hey, I've had everything, all the major life events happen to me within the first 30 years of my life. I had my parent die. I went through divorce as a kid, went through divorce myself. I had money. I lost money. I had a eviction notice on my apartment. It's all of the life events that they say you're supposed to go through. I had already gone through by the time I was 30. So by the time I met my current wife, I was like, bring it on. I'm good now. I've already experienced that. I always talked about how it's not the mileage on the tires, it's the tread. And that was the case. I didn't have a lot of mileage. Boy, did I wear down that tread.
Let me ask, because you've covered a lot. So let me dive in a little bit. You're raised in a household where you got mom who is at parties with potential presidential candidates and a dad who's in situations that has you around Hell's Angels. That is one hell of a mix. How, as a kid, you don't know any better, right? You don't understand that there's a difference in that dichotomy, right? But how did you handle those drastic of transitions at that point? Because that's a lot to do. I mean, as an adult, I can't think that, although I'd hang out with both crowds just fine, making those transitions on a regular basis, I don't know, as I think about it, I think I could be okay with it. But as a kid, I can't help but think, man, that's got to be tough.
And like you said, when I was younger, it wasn't that I realized it as much, but a lot of this was also happening when I did understand that there was a difference. And for whatever reason, partially it was my own personality, but partially what my parents and the attitude of the family that they both shared was everybody should be treated the same. And they did it from various reasons, though. Their reasons were somewhat different, but the message was the same. So when I wouldn't see the differences so much as how they were, their different philosophies on life, because I didn't get into those kind of conversations with them. But I did understand that, okay, the language that's being used on this one side versus the language that's being used on this other side, what am I going to do? And so you actually start to create a bridge. You actually, if you want to fit in. And so you start creating bridges. And those bridges is what enabled me to be able to make connections so quickly with people now. Right. It's very simple for me to make friends. And I think that goes back to the fact that I remember Rick and his candy purple Harley and taking the time to show me how it worked and, being a genuine good guy. And then on the other side, of course, all the adulation and learning the intricacies of business and politics and going and for the same reasons, because I was a kid. So I created a bridge between the two that made it like, okay, I'm going over here, I'm going over here, I'm going over here. And I don't think it was done on purpose, but it was done almost as a survival mechanism because I didn't want to disappoint either one. I wanted to on both sides.
Right. And here's what I love about it. And it just totally popped in my head. I can almost guarantee that you can walk into any room and connect with people. And the only reason I say that is you were brought up in such an extreme upbringing of different backgrounds that you had to have learned some skills to adapt to situations to be able to fit in is the wrong word, but be able to communicate effectively in those type of situations. So it sucked that your parents were divorced, but that happens in life. But what a outside perspective, cool way to learn how to effectively connect with other people along that journey. Yeah,
absolutely. And it amplified through junior high, high school, and college, where I realized just my own personality. And like you said, with that, what I was learning from those situations was I can make friends easily. And it turned into, well, how am I going to use this? And immediately people were saying, oh, you need to get into sales or politics. I'm like, nah, neither one of those particularly appeals to me. But business ownership as a part of sales was kind of like, okay, I could do that. Politics just had no interest to me at first, just because, quite honestly, at that time, I didn't think there was enough money. That was my real look at it from the perspective of like, I want to make money. Now I look at politics and go, oh, that's totally different. Now I can see where, it depending on what you're looking at to do, you can have an influence. But yes, I can go into rooms now and I can feel comfortable because I'm ready to take on whatever comes my way. My wife laughs because we'll go into restaurants and while we're waiting, people just kind of approach and start talking to me. She's like, what the hell? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't start this one. I was like, I didn't even, make a comment or anything. And it is that kind of.
Well, you say you didn't make a comment, but I'll tell you, 'cause my wife gives me hell about the same thing. I run into that, and I run into, she's like, we can't go anywhere without you running into somebody you know, right? So that's the other side of being, somewhat extroverted, able to make friends. And some people would say, we've never met a stranger in our life type personalities. It's not always a verbal communication that's given off. Right. A lot of times it's our body language being more open and everything else that people feel like. And I'm just curious because this is how I do it most times. My smart ass comes out a lot of times, and that's how a lot of the conversation starts. Somebody does something silly or whatever, and I'm going to immediately call them out in it because my smart ass, they drop something on the floor, and I'm immediately like, well, why the hell are you throwing things at me? Right. And I don't even know this person. Right. And it's those type of things that come out that, you make an instant bond with somebody 95, 98% of the time. Every once in a while you get some jackass that just stares at you. But, that's not you.
that is exactly it, where I see things from a different perspective. And so when that happens, like you just said, like you talked about with why you throw things at me, most of the time it catches someone off guard. And when that guard drops, all of a sudden, the conversations are so much easier to start. My son and I, it's sometimes now he's 21 today. And it's sometimes difficult. Well, it's not difficult. It's fun, but difficult for the family and other people around because we'll riff off each other when we're out in places. And he's very similar to me in a personality, and we'll start going back and forth. And it's sometimes if we were on a cruise for a family vacation just recently when we were a couple people spread out in the buffet line, and I'm ribbing him and he's ribbing me, and people don't realize that we're related. And so they were just like, what the heck is going on? And people were laughing and stuff. And then we walk off together and they kind of go, oh, but yeah, I'll do that even with strangers. And if someone's going to reciprocate, great. Let's see where that goes. And you're right, though. A lot of times I cannot count how many times that I've been, you're such a jerk, and, or I get the tap from my wife or my kids about, okay, this isn't, no.
I'm really curious. Has your wife ever looked at you and say, do you ever just turn it off?
Oh yeah. And I go, I can't.
That's who I am, right?
She's realized it's just me now, but she'll usually just kind of, she'll give me the preface of, okay, this is a situation where you could probably just keep it to a minimum. That would be appreciated. And if she's asking, I understand. Okay, I can respect that. Not a problem.
Well, but in the same token, what runs through my head is, please don't serve alcohol at this event. Please don't serve alcohol.
Yeah, so they've learned to be able to. And all my kids are older now because my youngest is 17 and my oldest turns 21 today. So they're all now at an age where they're kind of like they're beyond. They don't get embarrassed. They just realize that's how he is. And they've grown up with it. For the past 10 years, they've been basically my team. They've been my quote-unquote students, and they've learned all of the things that I try to teach and tell people about perspective and mindset, personal responsibility, and those things. So sometimes I'll start in on something, and they're like, yeah, that was lesson blah, blah, blah. Like, just go, be like, okay, all right, you got it. Okay, good job.
All right, Dad, got it.
Move on. So.
Right. What's funny about you and your son in the serving line like that is, so all three of me and my two brothers are extremely outgoing, crazy, smart ass, loud. There's a whole thing where we were in downtown Chicago. Me and my oldest brother on one side of the street, my middle brother's on the other side of the street, downtown Chicago, and we're yelling at each other. I mean, yep. but we're yelling in a very offensive manner. And then me and my brother, who are both Marines, go running across the road at my middle brother, and the whole crowd's cars stop, people stop because they think we're going, and we just, we run up, we get to each other, and we just walk down the street, but that's just how we are everywhere because we're definitely going to be centers of attention. That's fun. I love that.
Yeah, it is. For a while there, actually, I was treated as a double-edged sword because it wasn't always embraced. It wasn't like with my first marriage and that surroundings. It wasn't welcome. It was shunned, and it was a very difficult kind of internal conflict. Going, well, maybe I am wrong. There's a little bit of that doubt creeps in, and then it was no. This situation is a bad situation. This isn't bad people. It's just a bad situation. And I was able to embrace it to the sense of going, no. This is who I am. This always has been. And I talk about it kind of where there was that period where I lost myself, so to speak. And it wasn't in some ways it was rediscovering myself, but it was just basically getting back to who I was. And those who didn't know me before that thought it was like a new person.
Yep.
It wasn't. It was actually just getting back to the person I had always been.
I'm curious if you came to the same discovery I did, because I've had people in my life that muted that side of me as well. Yeah. Never my wife. She's always been amazing. But what I realized is they were muting me because of their own insecurities.
Oh, yeah.
They were worried about how I reflected on them versus, how I was reflecting to myself in others' eyes. Did you come to the same realization?
Very much so. It was first marriage, and we were trying to work it out, and I just stopped engaging because it was always constant bickering and little fighting and stuff. And when I stopped engaging, everything just fell apart quickly. But then I was exactly what I realized, that it was the image, and it was what she was afraid of on how it looked and how I was coming across. And it was very obvious and evident at that point going, oh, wait a second. Okay. This is actually a strong point of mine. And, we've been downplaying it. And yes, it was definitely a reflection of them and those around. I mean, you talk about when things go bad, you find out who your friends were.
Right.
Wow. It was like, business was crumbling. The marriage was crumbling. It was just kind of like all things were just happening. And you look around and go, that's interesting. Just yesterday I had, there was 10, 15 people wanting to talk to me, wanting to be in business stuff. Now all of a sudden I got like 2.
Right.
And you realize, okay, I think I'll talk to those 2, because those 2 are going to be the ones that are going to help me out. And again, it's all a reflection on them. Like, oh no, that business is failing, and that looks so bad on us and stuff. And kind of like, maybe it wouldn't have failed if you had stepped up and said, hey, what can I do to support you? Or, hey,
right.
I see what you're going through. But, people don't always have that approach of what can I do for you, and realize that will come back on you. It's the simple saying of, do the work, the money will follow. It's just that simple. It should be the value will follow, because not everybody does it for, money. But that phrase I used before where my dad said manners, they don't cost you a dime, make you a million. I always thought million was legit. I mean, when I was younger, I thought he meant that literally. And then I realized that million was just a substitute for value, whatever of value. Friendships are good for you. If it's friendships or if it's, business partners, it can be money, but it's just whatever is of value to you, that you will get there so much quicker if you're just nice and polite and have manners and thank yous and stuff. And they're just such simple concepts that are, I won't say that they're lost today, but I do think that they're diminished or muted, as you said, because we just don't value them as much because we don't have to. And I think that'd be an issue moving forward. When you do everything, I still find myself, if I'm using voice commands on something, although I don't use a lot, I say please. I'm talking to a machine and I say please because it's just habit.
Right.
And sometimes people will be like, they'll look sideways, kind of like, what? I'm like, why not? Why not? If you're in the habit of it, the sentence itself is please turn on blah, blah, blah is so much more appealing than turn on blah, blah, blah. You can affect someone's mood. You can affect people's mood by that one word. So if that can actually affect something in a positive way, why not do it? But, some people will, like you just mentioned about their image. I'm talking to a machine. I'm not going to tell them, please. Why not?
And what becomes such an interesting discovery for me is because of the times in my life I really cared about what other people thought. That's when I found myself muted. I was more worried of their image of me versus just being who I am. And I can look at most of my times in my life when I was unsuccessful, where things weren't going well. It usually led itself to because I was trying to please somebody else or be somebody else for somebody else. And although I've never said please to a machine, I don't think. So that's an oddity that I'll let you have, but I get it. It's the same as yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. For my sales career, I had to learn to stop saying yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, because in a large business sales transaction, you look at
somebody and say, yes, sir, you put yourself in the left or half of that conversation, which screws up negotiations. But I was raised in that world, so that was a very tough thing for me to do, is that natural programming you have growing up, those things. So I totally get how I can come out, to a machine and you're telling it, please,
Yep. It was just because that's the way I was speaking. It's just, it was, that, and it may not, a lot of times, depending on the situation, it may not keep going because you realize, okay, I am talking to a machine. But that initial, just because of your instincts are, please do that, or just thank you, or I don't think I've ever said thank you though. I'll give you that. I haven't done the thank you thing, but the please, yes, I know I'm guilty of that. And you're right about when you're failing it, that a lot of times it's because of the image that you're trying to protect that's not even yours. Was definitely spot on. I've had the saying where, it's okay to want to be liked. We all want to be liked, but just don't need to be liked. There's a big difference between wanting to be liked, because that's natural, and needing to be liked, and that's destructive.
What's interesting is how I finally figured it out that people didn't think about me as much as I thought they did. Was leaving a job. And there was a lady that I'd worked with for years, older gal, sweet as can be. And, I remember looking at her going, well, I'm leaving, I'm really going to miss you. And I'm sure you're going to miss me around here. And her exact words were, no, not really. And it was such a shock to my system, because I really had her as, we were this close knit. And it was the first time that I realized that for her, it was just business, right? It was nothing more. And granted, it was like being punched between the damn eyes, but it was a huge realization that, well, damn, people really aren't thinking about me. It's my thoughts putting things in their mind that are not working, that they're not there. So
yeah, I find myself now, it doesn't happen nearly as much now, because as you get your confidence, your genuine confidence in yourself, you realize, okay, you understand the way the world works. And to me, those realizations are less and less and less, because of the fact that you realize everybody has their own life. Everybody is involved in their own lives, and you understand what real relationships are. But I always call it like the mayonnaise theory, that for a short time, I owned a little sandwich shop on a little street in a little historic town. And it's a long story on how I ended up getting there. But I realized there was a mayonnaise theory, that everybody likes to order light mayonnaise. Everybody says light mayonnaise. But interestingly enough, when you give them light mayonnaise, you usually get a complaint that you didn't put enough mayonnaise on. Or if you just do regular mayonnaise and they don't complain. And then they come back and tell you how great your sandwiches were. Guess what? It's because I didn't put light mayonnaise on it, or for whatever reason. And you see this even if you go to some other places, and you start seeing it when people order food and stuff. And that the reason is because you order light mayonnaise or a diet something or other because you think that's what you're supposed to do. It makes you look good to the external world, that you're trying to take care of yourself, you're eating better, and all those other things that you're supposed to do. But when it doesn't happen, you're perfectly fine with it. It has no problem whatsoever. So you realize you're not really doing it for you. If you were doing it for you, you would actually not eat the rest of the sandwich, or you would return it, or what you'd follow through with whatever you did. But you don't. And we're all guilty of it in one way or another. But it just came home with that one where I realized, yeah, it's the mayonnaise theory, that we're all supposed to, eat healthy and all that stuff.
So guys, you just heard it from Marquez. Go eat unhealthy. That's what he's telling you right now. Don't even order the light. No, he's not saying that. I love unscientific thoughts like that. Little things like that happen that turn a light bulb on. And you're like, oh, once upon a time when I bartended, we had the tap wall, right? So you have like 50 taps on the wall. One side, you had your nasty American beers, your Budweiser, Coors Light, Miller Lite, yellow beers. Other end, same thing, same setup on both sides. Well, we figured out, and this is completely not a legal thing, but we figured out we could order Coors Original kegs, right, for about $20 a keg less than all the other. So we just ordered a whole ton of Coors Originals and hooked them up to all the American beers.
There you go.
Right? People would come in and they'd order a Budweiser and they're like, damn, this is good, right? And the whole time they're drinking Coors Original. Every once in a while, we would get a Budweiser, Miller Lite, whatever else, and they're like, dude, this just doesn't taste right. You're like, oh, maybe they didn't flush the lines. You go down to the other end that's still hooked up to Coors Original, and you'd pour them a Coors Original just from a Budweiser tap, and they'd sit down, they'd drink it and go, that's the Budweiser. And we would just laugh it off, and it happened all the time. But it's the same thing. It's all a mental thing, right?
One of the biggest phrases, and right now I think with everything that's going on, it explains a lot, is that, and I pounded this into the kids so that they hopefully know, and pretty much anybody that is asking about, this and that, and what do you do? And I go, the hardest thing in the world to do is admit when you're wrong. No matter what it is, no matter who you are, the hardest thing to do is admit when you're wrong, at whatever level it may be. And people would much rather hold on to being wrong than admit that they're wrong. They will go down the road of being wrong, continuously being wrong, even when the evidence, data, or just their own feelings tell them, hey, you're wrong. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. And it creates it. They'll have an internal conflict. They'll have external conflicts, all because they want to, quote unquote, save face and not just say, yeah, I was wrong. I'm not sure where I went wrong. I don't even know why I went wrong. You don't have to even find out the reasons, although it would be helpful for them. You be able to do that U-turn and say, no, I was wrong, because you won't move on, and you certainly won't get into any better places. And it explains a lot, like the beer thing, they technically should have realized, I'm drinking the same thing, but they'd have to tell you you're wrong, and they'd have to admit that they're wrong if they actually say that it's the same thing. So it's easier just to go on. It's easier just to move on and play it and keep going with it. And
absolutely, especially once emotions get into the game, right? Because once you become emotional, rationality goes out the window.
Yep.
And now pride kicks into place.
Oh yeah.
And you're not going to step around that pride, because then you lose face. And now it's
a snowball.
Yep.
It's literally a snowball. And that's why I say the hardest thing to do. And people say, no. Breaking up is harder and stuff, or the end of a relationship. I'm like, that's the same thing. You just have to admit that you were wrong. It doesn't mean that there was a fault. It doesn't mean there's even a negative. It just means that you were wrong. You thought this was going to be a relationship that was going to last. It didn't. That, by definition, is you're wrong. Now you can go into deeper levels and stuff, but obviously, if you don't accept that the relationship is over because you don't want to be wrong, well, we all know where that can go. That's just the relationship example. You can apply it to anything. And think about it in the world of politics. I mean, that's, that right there.
They're all wrong. I got it.
Yeah. It's so simple. And that's why I grounded into the kids. I'm just like, no matter what, just always tell me that you'll realize you don't, can't always do it. I mean, we're all, like you said, emotions and pride, but just, you're going to have me on that shoulder saying, well, maybe this is one of those times where I should admit when I'm wrong. Okay. At least if nothing else, I've done that. So
I'm curious, when you're on the shoulder, are you the angel or the devil at that point? I mean,
I think at that point, I think it's probably both. Because I know that they think of me that way to certain times.
I'm just curious if your kids are like, damn it, Dad, shut up. But yeah, you're not there, right? But in their head, they're like, they find themselves in a situation. All right, Dad, I'll admit I'm wrong. Because we all do that from our parents. Often find ourselves talking just like they talk, which is annoying as hell. When those things happen to us. So what are you doing with this cool upbringing? I mean, from the outside perspective, I think it's a cool upbringing. I get it. It was probably not as cool for you to go through all that stuff, right? But the learning lessons and life lessons and everything from it.
Well, by now, actually, it's interesting because those things are like ancient history in the sense of they don't have much effect. It used to be where, I could pull correlations of, oh, yeah, that's why I did that. Okay, that's why I fought so hard to do that. This is why I fought so hard to be, this way and stuff. And now, of course, it's pretty much all me. Before, it was very much a me, or them and me, and creating out of the three of us. Now it's pretty much just me, and hopefully I pass that on so my kids can do that. But what I do now is it's a little bit, I call it a challenge experience, and it's really just anybody, whether it's my business or just people that I'm talking to. A lot of times, whether it's social media, when someone says, I like your comment on that, where did you come from that, or something like that. And I use it now to just challenge people's viewpoints, their mindsets, their decisions. And not in the sense to say that, hey, you're wrong. The challenge can go either way. The challenge may prove that they are correct, or it could prove that, no, you need to revisit this. And a lot of times it can just be unsolicited, like you said, when you're out in a restaurant or just out in a public setting, someone does something, and I will say, I'll be like, interesting. Because, that could have went two ways. That could have went, this way, or it could have went this way. That was my passive aggressive saying, dude, what were you thinking? But a lot of times it makes, if I feel like it's significant, especially if it's something of safety, or, a lot of times when you get in crowds can get stupid. And, I'm the person that if you have an assigned seat, I'm not standing in line to get in, because unless there's something special going on, why? It's a logic. It's a common sense. Why, if you have an assigned seat, do you stand in line to get in? There's no point. You have an assigned seat. Now, if you don't have an assigned seat, that's different. But then people cut in order to get in sooner to an assigned seat. That's the kind of thing that I will literally say something in a crowd. You're like, where are you going? Or I brought it up in an IMAX. And people got all upset with me. And the usher goes, no, he's right. Yeah, he's actually, that's right. There's no point in standing in line. I don't know why you guys are standing in line. We're going to let you all in at the same time. And those are the simpler, lesser of things. But a lot of times driving is a main one where, that can be dangerous, where people make decisions that actually could hurt people. And again, I might, when we get to actually see them in the parking lot, I'll say something. And those are the unsolicited times. What I try to do is when people actually ask me, I've done it with businesses more than anything, which was kind of surprising. They've asked me to come in and see about, we're having this problem. We can't seem to overcome it. We just want another set of eyes. And that's where I can actually help out, because I look at it from a different perspective. I find out, well, what's your ultimate goal? And then I'm looking at it from a totally different mindset. And a lot of times it's just a one meeting kind of thing. And they're like, yes, I don't, we were just so narrow-minded. That's exactly what we were thinking. And I like helping people do that, because a lot of times through social media, Facebook and such, I get connections where somebody was in North Carolina and they were trying to start a music business. And I just made a comment because of my son. He's going to school for audio engineering. And they said something. And I'm like, oh, yeah, my background's in business. And so we just got into a conversation. And it helped them build. Then he sent me a text of the incorporation papers later. And he's like, you know what? I wasn't going to do that, but your conversation with you, helped me out. And it wasn't even something that was ongoing. I'm really averse right now to everybody saying coach, and it's taking a life of its own. And I actually took it off of all the stuff I do, where I'll do coaching, but I kind of come back to consulting, and I'm really just a resource, because I don't want it to be where everybody's a coach. I mean, unless you've established yourself, I don't know. It's just an area that I seem like, it's like real estate agents when there's a boom. Everybody becomes a real estate agent.
And I love your thoughts on coach, because even when I first started my business, I was a coach. There's my air quotes, coach. And the truth of the matter is I just had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I often wonder how many people did what I did and, put up a shingle and just said, okay, now I'm a coach, and expected the world to fall at their feet because they have this title of coach. And the truth is, I think unless, and this is my opinion as it's formed over the year of doing this, is, you're not a coach until you've had something of success, or you've been taught how to be a coach, right, to be able to come back. You may be able to consult with people, like you said, all day long,
right?
But you can't just throw up a shingle and say I'm a coach without having processes, procedures, things, and be able to take somebody from here to here. I think people just like to hear themselves speak, and they just love the title of coach, which usually when somebody says a coach to me, and this is my own thoughts, that just means unemployable. Because usually that person was the black sheep in the company, and their ego was so big and inflated and whatever. This guy, I'm pointing at myself, that was my problem.
I agree with that. It's funny because that used to be, when you're an independent contractor. Oh, okay. Or a consultant. And now that aura, like you said, is gone back to, now it's kind of the coach thing. And so I've gone back to saying, yeah, it's just consultant, because I realized my strengths weren't in the processes of it. Actually, that was my wife's strength. She's a productivity coach in the real estate arena, but that wasn't my strength. My strength was just almost a hit and run, where, what is it you're looking to do? Okay, I can help clear out the obstacles that are in your way so that you can get where you want to be. I'm not the one that's going to take you there. I'm not going to be the one that's going to have all the processes in place and the procedures. That's not me. But when it's a situation like that, I usually team up with somebody who's really good at that stuff. And it's like a handoff to them. And it works really well in that dynamic. And it was, like you said, I had to come to the realization that I'm not all of that. I'm not a coach in that sense. And I wasn't going to go online and just get a coaching certificate, because they were becoming so many, where there's some good places that mean it. And then there's some that are just, here, you did our online course, great, now you're a coach. I didn't want to go that route. I actually decided, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to take this truly seriously, even though I look at it as a passion project, I'm actually in the process of getting my master's in education, because I realized that's the part that I don't have. I'll go and get that structure from the educational side. And it's definitely eye-opening. I'm about a third of the way through, and it's great because a lot of the projects are simple because I've already done them in the real world. But the reasoning behind them is kind of like, oh, I never knew that. I didn't know that's why, that teachers and professors and stuff. So it's been interesting to actually kind of learn that. But yes, the title of coach, and it's starting to, you see it a little bit more about, well, what have you done? It's not so much about just your title. What have you done? And there'll be a thinning out of the crowd, like there is with every profession.
And along those lines, the next one's going to be entrepreneur, because entrepreneur is such a buzzword right now. Yep. And I keep telling everybody, and I had a guy get really mad at me at one point. I'm like, dude, entrepreneur is just the new MLM. It's the new multi-level marketing company, because everybody's got this in their head that, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow, because, everybody just makes money instantly with business. And like, oh no, yeah. Go try it. When you get your teeth completely kicked in and smashed in and you damn near lose everything, you'll understand what being an entrepreneur is.
Yes, that's so true, because same like you, I had that conversation with somebody because they said that entrepreneur wasn't trendy right now. I'm like, yeah, it is. And it was in a Facebook group, and actually it was nice because the administrator popped in and said, no, I got to side with Marquez on this one. He goes, a lot of us are used to the word. Like, I grew up with my mom. She was an entrepreneur. She had her own business, et cetera, et cetera. And so we become natural to it, but it's so now solopreneur, entrepreneur, a mepreneur, all of these variations of it. And I started, this is the way I was, just because I was thinking about on my own. Entrepreneur to me now is more of a state of mind. And if you can call yourself a small business owner, that's the tactile. That's actually the physical part of it. Because if you don't necessarily have a business license or an incorporation, it's just a state of mind. That's like you said, you could be an entrepreneur, like you said, but if there's nothing to back it, what does that get you? What does that mean? And if you're like, the MLM is a great example. If you're just trying to get people to, buy into something and so on, because you're arm of some corporation or something, yes, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, but you're not a small business owner.
100%.
And it would be questionable to say you're an entrepreneur, because you're really actually more of a salesperson, if you're doing that. So
that's something I, myself 100% have had to learn, is how, and I love telling people, everything I thought about being a business owner before being a business owner was 100% false. Tell people now that you've literally got to go get your teeth kicked in. And I know there's a lot of gurus out there. They're like, I made $1 million my first year. I'm now doing $100 million. And they're standing in front of Lambos and all this other stuff. The truth of the matter is, I bet if you really go back to the beginning of their story, it wasn't sunshine and rainbows. You're just seeing the sunshine and rainbows now because that's the image they're putting across, because it sells more crap. Yep.
And when I was actually kind of looking and when you were telling me about what the background of the show is and so on and such, I started thinking about, okay, well, I could talk about this, and I went, holy crap, have I failed at a lot of things. I was kind of like, that's kind of depressing. But I learned that each one was a building block. And, everything, of course, it was a learning experience. And some were clearly my fault for just reasons that make bad decisions. And some were like the situation changed. And it was, for lack of a better term, unavoidable, like divorce, for example. That was kind of one like, okay, well, yeah, things are going to change. That causes change. But yeah, I thought that was funny going, wow, I've started a lot of things and had moderate success, or started a lot of things that just didn't go anywhere. My wife actually put this on for her title for me, for a application that we were doing was professional dreamer. She actually put that on an official document as my occupation was professional dreamer. And I went, all right, I can go with that. I don't mind that. But yeah, it was, like you said, getting your teeth kicked in. And it's difficult and it's hard to learn. But if you can admit when you're wrong, it makes things so much easier. So.
Absolutely. So what are you doing now with all this? You've had a fun story. You've had a fun ride. You've had a cool upbringing. Walk us through what you're doing now and how you're impacting lives.
Right now, I'm basically doing the consulting. I call it, like we just talked about, the consulting, where I have my website, I have Facebook, I have a Facebook group. I'm still doing a little bit of the business stuff as well, so it's split. My time overall is split, helping my wife with her business and I have my quote unquote side hustle is helping other agents with the logistics of stuff. And that's cool because it's basically just helping them out when they need an extra person, like an assistant of sorts, where I can help show their houses, run around, do all their little things, stuff that I like, where I get to talk to vendors, I get to talk to people, but I'm not selling. That's part of what I do. The other part is the vision perspective. And that's where I'm helping, I call it the challenge experience, where if someone's looking to just try to get out of their rut, when they're trying to figure out how to do something differently, they have their goal, they even know kind of how to get to their goal, but they're stuck. I will come in and I will look at that situation and be, hey, well, have you looked at it from this perspective? Have you looked at it from this perspective? And it can be personal, professional, and organizational. That's how I call it. So literally, if it's someone who's looking to try to improve themselves, I'm not trained in that. So depending on what your issues are, from the personal side, yes, maybe we can break free, but we'll probably transition to someone who knows a little bit more. Professionally, that's a little bit easier. I'm helping you try to get your business started, or if you had a certain level and you're trying to get to the next level as a 1-person, 2-person, 3 company. And then my background that I'm natural at, that feels natural, is if it's a medium-sized company that brings it in to try to get a department running more efficient. All of it surrounds me challenging the situation that is the status quo, as far as, what are you doing now? Is it working? Why am I working? Okay, you want to make it work better. That's great. Okay. Or it's not working as well. That's why I'm here. And usually you're basically working yourself out of a job. But the goal essentially for me is that I'm not needed anymore. And most people, that's something you want to have an aversion to, because you want to hold on to whatever that contract is, whatever that relationship is, or whatever that is. Luckily I'm in a situation where that's not the case. I want to be like hit and run. I want to get in for whatever amount of time is necessary, and then I'm gone. And that's perfect because it helps them and it helps me. New challenges, new faces. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me going. When I do that on my own stuff, that's when you end up, like you said, you get your teeth kicked in, you got your failures, but each one of them was a building block to something else. And that's what makes me so relatable to so many situations, is that I pretty much know that if whatever you throw at me, I can relate at some form more than the next person, just because That's my background. It's just my experiences. So
That's awesome. Marquez, I got to tell you, brother, it's been fun having you on here. I love finding these other crazy outgoing people that we can just talk about whatever and just see where the damn story goes. That's always fun to me. So Thanks for doing this, brother. And then really thanks for sharing your journey with us, because not a lot of people really want to get through that portion of their life. So thanks for letting us, get a little insight into that world. Here's how I like to wrap up every show. And it stumbles some people, so get ready for it. If you were to leave my audience with a quote, a phrase, a saying, a mantra, something that they can carry with them on their journey, especially during those times when they're getting their teeth kicked in and they're trying to keep their head right and keep moving in a forward direction, what would be that quote or phrase you said, pull this out and remember this?
I actually got 2 for you. This is something that I love doing, so I won't be tripped up by it.
Awesome.
It's just one of those things, my background, marketing and so on. 1, think more, care more, live more. And those being broken down to think more about what you're doing, what the situation is, care more about other people, about how things affect them, and then just live more. Let things just go. Walk through the door, experience life, and just go with it. And more than anything, you can change your life. You can change the world one decision at a time.
Beautiful, brother. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. That's awesome. And guys, we'll put all of Marquez's, websites, Facebook groups, everything in the show notes so you can reach out to him. Marquez, brother, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your journey, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
You know what, guys? Really, thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we got out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people. And from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped to over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, "Get my social content done right now."